What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of I'll Call You Right Back podcast with me, your host, Chad Medved. Nice to meet you. First thing is first, please scroll down on your app that you're on right now and hit subscribe if you have not, and rate and review the podcast. It is the simplest and the most efficient thing you could do to help me out with what I'm doing. Take a second, give me a 5-star review, tell me what you like about the podcast. If you do not have nothing nice to say, please just don't say it. I mean, come on now, just don't say it. But if you do want to say something nice, slide on down there. Give me a review. Maybe hit my DMs with a screenshot, and I'll send you one of these brand new keychains that I just got in. So I won this little giveaway with Sticker Mule. They make stickers. Just entered it on Twitter, and they picked my name. So I have these little like acrylic keychains. They're pretty sick. But if you rate and review the podcast, send me a DM. I'll mail you one out free of charge. Anyway, Turner's Iced Tea is a proud sponsor of I'll Call You Right Back podcast. We are fueled by Turner's in this house, and I just wanted to let you guys know that Turner's Iced Tea, they're doing something a little bit different now. This chocolate-covered strawberry milk that they just released is giving back to, I guess you could say, the community. And if you buy a half gallon, they will donate 10 cents. And if you buy a pint, they will donate 5 cents to Dr. Bill Neches Heart Camp for Kids at Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh. So basically, this is a summer camp that is put on for kids that have heart problems, and it's basically a way for them to be able to, be normal and feel normal and do normal things that all of us, I'm sure, take for granted. But Turner teamed up with the Heart Camp, and like I said, if you buy some chocolate-covered strawberry milk, they will donate 10 cents per half gallon and 5 cents per pint. So it's great milk. I mean, if you like drinking milk, and if you like them flavors, chocolate-covered strawberry, it's definitely tasty, and it will give back. Last thing I want to talk about before we get to this week's guest. So Friday is a Vinyasa yoga class taught by Yoga Ralph at Yoga Flow in Murraysville. That sounds like a Dr. Seuss book, but Yoga Ralph, he's been a guest on the podcast a couple times. I've been getting crazy into yoga. Me and my wife have been going, multiple times a week, and I cannot urge it enough to just, if you can get past the bizarre feeling of it, of just bending over in a room, it sounds way, way simpler than it is. Hot Vinyasa yoga is yoga where you're in a room that's like 95 degrees, and Yoga Ralph is going to wring out your liver like you never believed. And he has a class on Friday, 6:30, Yoga Flow in Murraysville. It's $5 cash, and it's going to be a good time. That's where me and Antoinette are going for Valentine's Day. Nothing like a little yoga date. And on the way back, we're going to slide by and get some pizza. We've been trying to eat a little bit healthy, but we're going to slide on that diet and find a pizza somewhere. So, I don't know. We've been looking up places for pizza, and I think we're going to try Badamo. I think it's called Pizza Badamo, I think. The Hounds told me about it last week, and I talked to my wife about it, but I think that's what we're going to try out this week. If you've had it before, slide in my DMs. Let me know what you think about it. If I'm wasting my time, let me know. If it's great, let me know. I would appreciate it because I want to make it count. I've been on a diet. I'm trying to make it count. But speaking of a diet, it's a perfect segue. This week's guest is Hal B Klein. Hal is the Pittsburgh Magazine food editor and dining critic, and he is also an avid gardener. I first heard about Hal through Matt at Streets on Carson. They have a Turkey Devonshire, and Hal was doing he was basically going around the city trying to find the best one. And if you have not tried it yet, Streets on Carson has one that you could write home about. It is pretty tasty. But Hal is he was just a super cool dude. He came in, we talked about all kinds of stuff regarding food, regarding, acting, regarding how someone kind of gets into being a food journalist, and how someone gets a job where they basically, they basically just go around and eat good stuff and tell people about it. You know what I mean? That's their job, is to kind of filter out all the bullshit, and they kind of just put you on to all the great stuff. Like I said, Hal is the editor, and he puts out the best of every year for Pittsburgh Magazine, and it's always pretty spot on. He's very, very good at doing reviews. They always seem like very genuine. They don't seem very, very they don't seem very fabricated. And you could tell that from the episode. We talk about a lot of great stuff. I thought that this was a really interesting episode because it's interesting, the world that we're in right now. Everyone has an opinion about something. Some people's are worse than others. So it's great to talk to someone that has an opinion that is highly regarded among people of our city. So without further ado, episode 105 of I'll Call You Right Back podcast with Hal B Klein.
I gotta use the telephone.
Hello?
Telephone.
I'll call you right back. Call you right back.
Telephone.
I'll Call You Right Back podcast.
The Californian in me is like, man.
Yeah, it's I tend to enjoy Pittsburgh very, very much, but the rainy days are kind of like a drag.
Yeah.
It's nice to be inside, but whenever you got to be outside and you're driving and it's it's hard to drive in the rain. Everything's real shiny and annoying.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's most of the time it's fine, and then it's just it's after when it's after days of just dreary rain.
Yeah, and it's
then
it's relentless. It doesn't back off at all. The snow is nice though. I like having I don't like it to be inconvenient all the time, but to have 1 or 2 days of snow is nice. It was a nice change.
Snow's great.
Are you from Pittsburgh?
No, I grew up in New York, and then my family moved when I was 14 to Northern California.
Oh yeah.
So I'm very half and half of my life, New York, half California. And I've been here it'll be 10 years in August.
10 years?
Yeah.
What brings you to Pittsburgh?
I moved here to get a master's in food studies at Chatham and thought I'd be here for 2 years. And then over the course of time of being here, just, stayed. I just fell in love with the city.
Yeah, what's not to love about it, right?
It's great, yeah. Got a great job, so.
It's nice that Pittsburgh is it's big enough to feel big kind of and have some culture in it, but it's not too big where it's you got to drive an hour and a half to get to wherever, California. Anywhere you drive in California, you got to go and sit in traffic for 40 minutes, and it's cool out there too. I like going out there for a couple days, but I like Pittsburgh. It's nice to be able to go from here to the other side of the city in 40 minutes.
Yeah, it's nice when people are oh, it's far away and it takes 20 minutes to get there.
Yeah, you
I
got a
lived
good
in
bit of people
Los
in here.
Angeles for 5 years before moving here, and it was, on a good day, my brother also lived there at the same time, and on a good day it would take us 45 minutes to see each other because we were on opposite sides of the city.
Yeah.
And on a bad day it was just shit, it's going to take 2 hours.
Yeah, no reason.
Not going to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not going to see you.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly what your title is. What is your title?
So my official title is Associate Editor and Dining Critic of Pittsburgh Magazine. What that really means is I run the food section at the magazine.
Yeah.
So writing restaurant reviews is part of my job. It's probably the part of my job that is the most public facing, I guess.
Yeah.
But I write about, I cover everything from farms and farm policy to, trying to find interesting people doing things with food that aren't necessarily, a critique of a restaurant.
Yeah. Like the Devonshire.
Like the Turkey Devonshire, yeah. Where
Yeah.
I just went down a rabbit hole of insanity.
Well, that's how I was even aware of who you were, because I'm friends with Matt at Streets, and I obviously saw his in the write-up, and then whenever I had Rick on here, he mentioned you. And, I don't know how else I seen you before, but then I messaged you and I was like, wow, you look like you got an interesting job. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool to be able to chronicle what's happening in food in this city, and to work for a publication that gives me the freedom to pursue something. So with the Devonshire, it was supposed to be feature on sandwiches, kind of like a sandwich roundup, best sandwiches in Pittsburgh or this and that.
Yeah.
And I was doing that, taking notes, going to places, went on a sandwich crawl with a friend of mine, Nicole Battle, who's was the president of the Bartenders Guild.
Yeah.
Is around town. And she was like, oh, we should go to Joe's Rusty Nail. They've got good sandwiches. It's like just a place out in Bellevue. It's like sort of, it's not quite a diner, but it's not quite a restaurant. It's sort of that in-between kind of neighborhood joint place. And I was looking at things and I saw on the menu, I was like, oh, Turkey Devonshire, like that sounds interesting. I had no idea what it was. I ate it,
really?
it wasn't even the best example of it at all, but there was something about it that like just like got under my skin.
Yeah.
And then
What was theirs?
there's
Your first.
What's that?
What was theirs? Like if it was your first experience?
It was just like a pretty standard contemporary Devonshire, which means that it was, like the turkey. I can't remember if that turkey was actually fresh made. I don't think it was.
Yeah.
With like a cheese sauce that was, like a little bit better than just like a standard cheese sauce. But,
Yeah.
It wasn't like really as well developed as some of the ones I had later or some of the ones from the classic era. But for whatever reason, like I got home and just like went down this like rabbit hole. And it was really exciting for me because I was like, wow, like Pittsburgh, the first thing people say when you say Pittsburgh outside of Pittsburgh is like, oh, the place with the French fries on the sandwiches.
Yeah.
Unless you're in Prague.
Yeah.
And then everyone says Yarmir Yager, which
Yarmir Yager?
was amazing. Yeah. Everyone, like to a person, I was like, where are you from? Like Pittsburgh. And they're like, oh, Yarmir Yager. He's our hero.
Oh my God. That's the best.
Yeah. It was great.
Of anything in Pittsburgh, Yarmir Yager is brought up.
Yeah, Prague they were all for it. But anywhere else you go, especially in the US, it's like, oh, it's that place with the French fry sandwiches. And then to learn that there was this entire other sandwich that has this like amazing history and that it's very similar to something called the Hot Brown in Louisville that's still like a tourist destination in Louisville. People are like, oh, you have to go to the Brown Hotel and have a Hot Brown. Whereas this in Pittsburgh, the Devonshire just basically fizzled out in a lot of ways. So it's like few and far between.
And this was from 1933, right? Like, it was Frank, what was his name?
Blandy.
Blandy?
Yeah.
And, but the Devonshire was like, so was it ever like decided what was first? The Hot Brown or the Devonshire?
The Hot Brown was definitely first,
Okay.
but there's no evidence that this was a knockoff of it.
Yeah.
What made the story even more exciting was, so I ended up emailing Dr. Tim Ryan, who's the president of the Culinary Institute of America.
Yeah.
Who's from Pittsburgh.
Oh, really?
And is still really, he hasn't lived here for a long time, but still really keeps tabs of what's going on here.
Yeah.
And so I asked him, I was like, hey, do you know anything about this? And he's like, do I ever? And turns out he's just as obsessed with this thing.
Really?
So I've got the president of the Culinary Institute of America like sending me this like 5-page like history the next day. and then, we start kind of bouncing ideas of where we think it comes from. And I start asking other people. And so it's interesting. And no one really knows, it wasn't documented.
Yeah. It's such a weird, bizarre thing.
So long ago.
I don't know if I think I had one maybe at like a Denny's or something a long time ago, and I remember not liking it because of like it was just overly saturated with terrible cheese sauce.
Yeah.
And then I had the one at Streets, and I was like, holy shit, like this is great. And but it's just like it's like a bizarre sandwich. Like for someone that doesn't have any like food education, you're just like, what is it? Is it like it's an open faced turkey sandwich with cheese all over?
Yeah,
it?
It's an open faced turkey sandwich with cheesy gravy. I mean, that's really what it is.
Yeah, and it sounded intriguing, and I ate it, and I was like, man, this is really good. I liked it. It was definitely interesting. Before we get too deep into this, because I feel like we're just going to go off on all this, I do an opening segment with everyone. It's called What's in the Cup?
What's in the cup?
What is in your cup?
So I asked for a Yoo-Hoo, which was the kind of the favorite beverage of my youth.
Oh man, I'm so excited to
I haven't had one of
this.
these in like a very long time though. So
Like, how long do you think? Me and my wife were just talking about it. I bet you this is like maybe 15 years.
yeah, I'd say it's a good 15, 20 years since I had
Oh,
one,
I'm so excited then.
which is
All right,
great.
Let's crack this open.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers to Yoo-Hoo. I still kind of like it.
Yeah, it's not terrible. I thought I would dislike it way more. I'm hit or miss with milk, you know? And I remember it being, I never grew up on Yoo-Hoo, really. I was a Nesquik guy. We had the dry mix Nesquik. But this is pretty good. I'm happy with it.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, it tastes, kind of artificial, but not in a bad way.
Yeah. You could definitely taste it's artificial, but it's not terrible. It's definitely drinkable.
Yeah.
But, all right. So.
Oh, man. It's mostly water and high fructose corn syrup.
Oh, of course. I didn't even want to look.
And then the milk is less than 2% ingredient on here.
There's 3 grams of protein for all of your young kids that need to grow up strong. Total sugar is 47 grams. Jeez. Anyway, so you are, whenever I find someone that I want to talk to, I basically just deep dive into their social media, like basically Instagram. And your Instagram was like everything I could have wanted. It's like very, very like beautiful photos of just like spreads of amazing food. And as soon as I was like, man, got to talk to him because like you seem to have my base for this podcast is I just like talk to people and figure out how they kind of like got into that lane in life. Everyone has a different lane and I kind of want to know how you find your own. So like you said, you grew up in New York beforehand. Like that's where you were younger?
Yeah, so I was born in Queens and then grew up just outside of New York City in a suburb called New City.
Can I ask how old you are?
44.
And were you always like a foodie?
No, I was like super picky eater.
Really?
I loved what I loved, but I hated what I didn't love or what I didn't know.
What was like your jam back then? Like
pizza, which is still New York pizza is still my soul food.
Yeah, that makes sense then. What did you hate?
Vegetables. Fish.
Okay. Yeah, I was never a big vegetable, or I'm still not very huge fish guy, but I like sushi. I just don't like baked whitefish really. It's like I kind of stray away from that. But so when you're younger, like do you have any ideas of what you want to be? I feel like that was this something you wanted to be when you were very young?
No, when I was younger, my plan was to be a lawyer and then run for Congress.
Wow.
I was a very serious kid. I had a very serious plan, and that was the path I was going to do, and I was set out on.
Until
and then
age?
when I just turned 14, my dad got a promotion, and he was in the technology industry, and so we moved to California. Because Silicon Valley, it was the boom of the tech age.
Wow.
And so I remember, I went to summer camp as a kid, and I remember coming home and I was like, oh, what are we going to do for our vacation to California? And they're like, we're going to move. Oh. It's not a vacation. And I was so pissed.
You didn't want to leave?
Like starting high. No, because I was like, I had all my friends and.
That's a good point.
That
got to be rough.
Yeah. And love where I grew up. And so we moved just outside San Francisco. And I was like this like kind of like awkward kid, but I had done plays in summer camp and really liked it, and took a theater class in high school and really took to it, and then went to college, still thinking I was going to major in, I don't know, law or whatever you would do.
So you still wanted to do that as you're in college? Like you still had that idea?
I thought that was going to happen, and then like 4 days after I got there, I declared myself a theater major, and that was it, and had a career in acting for a while. Career is sort of a loose term because you're doing like I moved to back to New York and did off-Broadway shows and did some regional theater, and then moved to Los Angeles and was in a couple films. But most of the time when you're doing that, especially in Los Angeles, in New York I was always doing theater and always doing plays. So between that and odd jobs, it was like busy. In Los Angeles, I ended up having more time because there's just like time in between films and you're auditioning, and as over the years, I remember going to a farmer's market when I was doing the Shakespeare Festival in Northern California one year and eating like an in-season strawberry, like fresh from the field from the first time. And it just like blowing my mind.
Really?
Because I think, what happens is, especially during that age, it's gotten a little bit better, but it's still not great, is you eat like all this like out-of-season produce and it's not good. Like if you go to the grocery store now and get strawberries, they're not going to be good, right?
That's a good point.
And not in the same way.
Yeah, and if you go to some place where they're ripe and in season, it's kind of mind blowing. We just went to Portland and to Pike Place Market, and like I'll never forget the guy was like just slicing off pieces of mangoes, and like he gave me a slice of it, and it was like literally the best. It was the best. I get mangoes all the time from like Market District and shit. this was the best mango I've ever had. And every single thing they had out there was just like so much more flavorful. We like cooked dinner one day at the Airbnb and like everything just tasted better. It was, it seemed to be, they have a better like source of it all.
Yeah, and when you get it like that, you know, it really, if you're predisposed to something like that, which I guess I was, you know, it just changes your perspective.
Yeah.
And so that sort of got me set on the path of what's there. And then when I was in Los Angeles, you know, it's the best farmers markets in the country.
Yeah.
Santa Monica Saturday market and the Hollywood and Santa Monica Wednesday market and like the Hollywood Sunday market. And it's like you just go and you're eating all this stuff. And then as the economy sort of started going south in 2007, 2008, the entire structure of what was happening with Hollywood changed. And so the jobs that I was getting were suddenly being taken. So you'd see someone who was a series regular on one TV show take like a day job on another TV show or a small part in an indie film, which would normally go to someone that was like building a career.
Now, could I ask you? I like I Googled you and I came up with an IMDb. Mm-hmm. Were you in like I can't remember the one. Alan Rickman was in the movie?
I did a couple movies with him, which was cool. The biggest one is a movie called Bottle Shock, which is about the explosion of Napa Valley wine in the late 90s or late 70s.
Really?
And that's the only movie I've been in that like got some like actual traction at the box office.
Yeah, that was the first thing that popped up, and I was like, "Is that Professor Snape?" And I like started looking into it a little bit more. I was like, I think it is, and I just didn't know if it was. I mean, I didn't see photos if it was you or if it was someone else with the same exact name.
Yeah, no, it's me. I was in a wig and played this like real like stoner dude. So like, but you know
cool,
what's weird is like in the age of big data, if you like are friends with me on social media somehow or like social like Amazon knows that you know me. When you look it up, my name comes up as like one of the 3 people listed. So it's like a movie. There's all these people that are like big names, big stars, and it'll be like Alan Rickman, Chris Pine, and Hal B Klein. Yeah, but if you don't know me, then like someone like Bill Pullman or Elijah Dushku, who should come up, would be the person.
Man,
but it's like
Dushku.
It's like super creepy though that like
that's weird that it does
Amazon
that.
Tracks you.
It's the same shit as like I think that I was listening to a podcast one time and they were talking about truffle hot sauce and I was like, I never heard about that. It sounds good. Like and then a minute later it was like truffle hot sauce, like add it to your cart right now, just on Instagram, and you're like, that's super creepy.
Yeah.
But so like acting and like that's one thing I feel like I've done so much like random shit. I've done like stand-up podcasts, like all this shit. That's one thing I never did in school or anything, and I swear to you, I regret that more than anything. Is like never doing like theater. I don't know why I never did it back then. I just was playing football, but you did it for a lot of years. Like you like doing it.
Yeah, I mean that was my life, and it's and it's something that I miss like sometimes still. But I mean I love what I do now. But I'm randomly a few years ago, T-Mobile cast a national commercial that was shot in Pittsburgh, and I'm in that.
Really?
Which was great. It was a union job, so it was like the Screen Actors Guild union is still a great union that you do a commercial, you get paid really well. So that was amazing. So I'm in that, and then
that's fantastic.
Sometime this summer or this spring, I shot last fall a commercial for Visit Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
where I play a character called Beach Dad. Which like I remember sitting at the audition, like I don't have time to like go out and audition that much, but like I remember sitting at the audition and there's a lady sitting next to me and 2 kids on the other side of me, and the woman sitting next to me starts talking to the kids. It's like right when school is about to start, with like this mom talk, and I was like, oh shit, I'm auditioning for Dad.
Oh my god.
And it was like the first time that like,
and you got it
for something like that, but I got it.
Wow.
And so it's fun. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to like get involved with. So like, I mean, if that strawberry changed your whole trajectory of life.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, Strawberry and the economic collapse of 2007, 2008.
Yeah, we'll give it to that too.
Set me on a path.
So, like, what are your moves after that? Like, you just decided to, I want to get into food. Like, were you picky at that point, or were you like a foodie at that point?
I was sort of like somewhere in between, and then like when I ate that, it made me think about like what else is out there, and then I started getting more interested in food, and I was still living in New York at the time, and what's interesting is, like who's out on a Monday night at like 11 p.m. or midnight? It's actors and chefs, right?
Yeah.
And service industry people. So
that's a good point.
I ended up just befriending a bunch of people that worked in the service industry, and making friends with some chefs. I'm still actually friends with a chef named Damian Cincinnati, who I learned years. I'm sure I knew it at the time, but like didn't register at the time that he actually grew up in Pittsburgh.
Oh, really?
And he was like building his career. He's in Portland, Maine now, but it's cool because now we have this like extra connection of
Yeah, that's like
Pittsburgh overlap.
separation.
So it was like suddenly it's around these food people, and then when I moved to Los Angeles to pursue acting, food was always something I was interested in. And then at a certain point, I ended up just like taking a class in food writing at UCLA Extension with Patrick Koo, who was the Los Angeles Magazine dining critic at the time.
Oh,
And that just like it got me interested, and I just started blogging a little bit and writing a little bit, and then at a certain point, I was like, this like Los Angeles isn't doing it for me. Like what should I do? And I kind of made a list of like things that I could do.
yeah.
And at the time I was more interested in writing cookbooks and like kind of teaching people who were like me
Yeah.
how to go to the grocery store and how to source for stuff and how to navigate farmers markets and how to get excited about food in a way that would like break the chain of like the kind of like industrial zombie food system.
Yeah. Were you like cooking at this point? Like,
Yeah, and I was like, I would go to restaurants, but like writing about restaurants, like and writing about that stuff wasn't my thing at all. It was like writing about like what's good at the farmers market and how to like source stuff.
That's pretty cool.
And that's still like honestly like the thing that I'm like most interested in.
Yeah.
Like I love writing about restaurants, but like I love even more writing about farmers.
What is even like taught in food journalism? Like what you were talking about, like for a class, like how do they even teach that? You just go somewhere and eat and you write about it?
Kind of. I mean, that class was great because he brought in someone every week who was a little bit different. So, we'd had like, Jonathan Gold, who was the legendary food writer of Los Angeles and restaurant critic of Los Angeles, who passed away a couple years ago. He came in and talked about his journey and, what inspired him and what he looked at restaurants. But then we also had people that were like into like farmers markets and things like that. So you got like a little bit of and people that would write about like food memory and food writing,
that's
so
cool.
there's so many different facets to it. And
Yeah.
when I ended up in Pittsburgh, because I was like, all right, I want to do something with food. And there's this sort of esoteric master's degree called food studies, which is like a broad look at like different food systems. So you look at it from like sociology, from anthropology, from history, from contemporary thought.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And, my classmates, I was part of the first cohort at Chatham. And I mean, I have classmates who do everything from like public policy to farming to my job. So it's a pretty broad.
Yeah, broad.
But I took a food writing class there with Sherry Flick, who's a local writer, and just really got into it. And then she and my classmates at the time were like, you actually don't want to do this like sort of bro-y voice, like shopping guy thing. Like
Yeah.
I was really interested in how food history like becomes relevant in like contemporary society. So I got really interested in Italian American food culture in Pittsburgh and this kind of revival of practices that people brought from where they were from.
Yeah.
And some people lost it, but what's special about Pittsburgh is a lot of people came from like Abruzzo, Calabria in the 50s, 60s, and 70s that are still alive that kept their foodways. So when you look at like people from the 1900s that came over during that mass wave of immigration,
Yeah.
either they or especially their children were like, no, like that's embarrassing that you're foraging for dandelions. We have grocery stores. That's embarrassing that you're growing things. Like we have grocery stores. Whereas
that's
like this
pretty
like wave that
interesting.
came over in the 50s and 60s were like, I'm going to take a fig tree from where I'm from and I'm going to stick it in a potato, like a cutting from the tree, and stick it in a potato and take it on the boat with me and plant it and go to like elaborate measures to grow it in a place that it doesn't grow. And like that just like fascinated me so much.
Yeah, that's wild to think about. Like, I mean, I don't have any skin in the game, so like I don't really think about things like that.
Yeah.
But to have you like bring that up, that's pretty crazy to think about. It's like the process of like, it's weird that you're like going out and you're like foraging, but like, people are just doing this for you and you can just go to one place and get everything you need. That's pretty bizarre.
Yeah. And I think like, and you can think about it in both ways, but like on the other hand, it's like, at the time we were also going through this revival and this idea of like, wait, we can go out and like, it's pleasurable and enjoyable to go forage for ramps
Yeah.
in April because it's the first time we're going to be able to get some like fresh produce here, and like it's great to grow. Like I grow a garden And there's something really satisfying about that. It's not for everyone, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I saw that that's in your bio. You said you're an avid gardener.
Yeah.
Now, that's something that I have no skill in whatsoever. Have you always been interested in it?
I've been doing it for, a solid 10 years now.
Okay.
Fairly seriously. And then I bought my house. This will be the 7th season of the garden, I think. So
That's pretty cool.
Once I knew I was going to stay somewhere for a while, I got really invested in it. And it's, but it's like, it's one of those things that like, it works for me. But I also,
you have to put time into it.
Yeah.
Like my brother, he is a man who just does, he overdoes things. His whole backyard, he turned into like it had to be like probably 30 by 40 yards of just like rototill. And he was just growing like everything.
Yeah.
And just handing it to people, just giving people these zucchinis the size of like full babies. And you're just like, geez, I've never grown anything really. I have one plant that I've been keeping alive since, 2007. That's to my ability of it, but it interests me more and more. There's someone that I had on here. She's a guest. She's the brothmonger. Are you familiar with her?
Her soup's amazing.
Yeah, it's absolutely unreal. And like she honestly is like motivation as far as like me wanting to like go out and get ingredients and use them and utilize them in a different way, because like I've never had things that like she cooks. And I talked to her before she even started doing this. She's a funeral director.
Yeah.
And we did an episode like a year beforehand. And I want to bring her back on again and talk to her about soup because of like how interesting it is. And she lives by that nursery, and like to walk in there and like see what they have there is super interesting to me. So like gardening is like something that's been creeping into my like hobby list. I need to get into it a little bit more though.
Yeah. It's so satisfying. And it's like, on a beautiful summer day to be able to spend a couple hours out there and then
it gotta be peaceful.
And, make dinner, and you don't have to do much when it's like a tomato.
Yeah,
that's
and it
like
probably
perfectly
tastes
ripe, right?
100 times better than what you're getting in there.
Yeah.
You got the produce that they put a sticker over to cover every
yeah,
bad
exactly,
markup. So like you're getting into all this and like you're taking these classes like I see your Instagram, but I don't know exactly what it is. Like, are you on TV?
Sometimes, yeah. So I go on I write for Pittsburgh Magazine now, and we have a relationship with Pittsburgh Today Live, and a bunch of us go on and we sort of rotate through. But yeah, whenever there's like a big story that I wrote, I go on and I get to talk, and it's super fun.
But are you like cooking at some things?
Once in a blue moon, yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's what I just didn't know what that was, and I could read the descriptions, but like I'd rather just ask you about it.
Yeah, and it's nice. So I think I'm going to go on there again pretty soon to do another cooking demo.
That's pretty cool.
But it's great, and it's exercises for me, like another part of my brain and my creativity.
Yeah, I mean,
do that
and to get your like feet wet into that, I feel like it would be fun. Just another thing you could do that. I mean, it obviously has something to do with your career, but it's just like a fun like side. That makes a lot
it's
of
great,
sense.
and it kind of circles back around to the thing that I wanted to do originally.
Absolutely,
which was like show people that it's like things aren't that hard. So
that's super interesting. Now, how did you like? For you to kind of get in with the magazine, like how does that even like come into play? Like, do you graduate with that master's degree and then you pursue that, or you pursue that?
I actually started writing while I was still in grad school. So after the food writing class ended, like a couple weeks after it, Sherry Flick emailed. I think she emailed like 3 of us and said something along the lines of, the person that writes about booze for Pittsburgh City Paper abruptly left, and they need someone to fill it pretty quickly. I think all of you, for various reasons, would be good at this job. If you send them a pitch, let me know, and I'll put in a good word for you. So I was actually visiting friends in California, and I was like, as soon as I read the email, I was like, I want this. I'm going to do this. So I wrote this pitch. Ended up getting a job writing about drinking for Pittsburgh City Paper.
Really?
A column called On the Rocks, and I wrote for that for several years. And that was great because it was a really great way to like understand what was going on in Pittsburgh, because bartenders see everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet.
And to really get a handle on the service perspective of what was happening, I had a really great education on just the entire landscape of Pittsburgh. And I got to drink for work, which was cool.
So like you're just going to different places and like trying different things and then like kind of breaking them down and like
a little bit. Yeah, I mean it was it's a weekly column with something like that is like it's tough sometimes just because it's like what are you going to write about every week?
Absolutely.
So it was 48 to 50 columns a year. And so it was, some of it was just if a restaurant opened, I'd write about the bar program. It was during the time when breweries were starting to open a lot. And in the beginning, it was like every single new brewery that opened, it was like a story. And then it got to a point where it was like, holy cow, there's so many breweries.
Yeah, it's insane.
So it was like that. It was, my favorite story from that era ever was there's a liquor called Super Punch.
Yeah.
It's an Amaro. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I'm not.
It's aside from the turkey, it's Pittsburgh's greatest imported product. It's also the worst Amaro.
Say it again. Amaro.
So Amaro is a category of bitter digestive liquors that comes from Italy, that are similar to Jägermeister. Jägermeister it's from a different place, but is basically an Amaro under a different name. And I was at a bar one day and I saw this like elaborate bottle that was bigger than the rest of them, and I was like, "What is that?"
Yeah. And
the bartender was like, "Dude, that's Super Punch." And I was like, what is Super Punch? And it turns out, so it tastes sort of like Tutti Frutti.
Oh, really?
Like boozy Tutti Frutti. It's not good like on its own. But
do you drink it on its own? Or
sometimes. I mean, I have an affinity for it now, but I mean, you could drink it like, if you drink it like sort of diluted, like 6 parts soda water to 1 part Super Punch, it sort of tastes like Pepsi.
Oh, okay.
But you can mix it into stuff.
That's pretty interesting.
I think it's still on tap at the Independent Brewing Company.
Oh, wow.
And there's this like really like the story, like a poorly translated story on the back that just ends in mid-sentence. So it's like a unique and refreshing liquor of its kind. And then it ends with like, like it's best when sprinkled on. But that's it.
So it just means best,
so it's just like,
best on anything?
Like, best on what? And I don't know. It's like similar to the Turkey Devonshire. It's one of those things that I was like, this is fascinating.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And it turns out that it's imported from Italy direct by importer in the Penn Hills.
Oh, really?
Because it was his father's village Amaro. So each Amaro is geographically specific.
Jeez.
And it was imported because it was a lot of people from that village moved to like Penn Hills and around there.
That's pretty crazy.
And so I wrote about it, and then it became this thing where bartenders and bars like started carrying it again, and it kind of sparked this revival.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And he was like, "Man, this is weird because it used to be just like 6 old men, drinking it in the garage, and now suddenly all these hip bartenders are."
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Like what trends on again, and like what I feel like people like. Nowadays we're in like that learning age where everyone wants to like learn about the old vintagey stuff and kind of like adapt to it. I don't know. It's almost like it's interesting. I find myself doing that too. Like I just look into the history of things and I just try to figure out like where it all comes from. It's just. I never really cared about shit in the beginning. Like even in high school and everything, I never cared about like history or anything like that. Now that I'm getting older, I actually like care about details of things and like the history of like whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. Whenever you were doing this column, how stressful was it? Cause like I do this podcast and I do one every week. I haven't missed one for 105 weeks. And it's like, it's pretty stressful for me, but I feel like for you to write something, like I have someone that's basically giving me the information that I need. I don't have to like put it together. You're basically giving me my information and I'm just driving it along the way. For you to like go to a place and like come up with like an article with like some substance in it, how difficult was that? I
mean, it's not dissimilar in the sense that like, and I'm sure you might feel this too, that like they're like months long stretch where you're just on a roll, right? And it's like ideas are coming and I want to book this person, I want to talk to this person, and I want to do that. And it's the same for me with stories. It's, there are times where I've got a list of 15 things I want to write, and then it's easy. And the writing, the reporting part is like so much fun for me because I get to learn all the time.
Absolutely.
And I get to kind of step back and like I try to like not impose my perspective on things or think about, I want to learn as much as I can.
Yeah.
And then it's, some stories, the Turkey Devonshire story, like that one was easy to write.
Yeah, I feel like something like that. If you go down a hole, like you just have endless amounts of knowledge to like, kind of go to.
Yeah.
Like
so there was like
data.
so much in there. And then, the fun part is then playing with structure, and it's, how do you want to open the story, and, what's the arc of the story, and where do you want to do that? And that's generally pretty exciting for me.
Yeah.
And generally really fun. But then there are times that, for whatever reason, like if you're not sleeping well or you're just like hit a block.
Absolutely.
then it's, so this happened to me a couple months ago, earlier this year or last year. I was just like, that's it. Like, I have no more stories to tell, which is bullshit. But, it was a struggle. And then I went to a reading at City of Asylum, and there was a refugee from Somalia who was in town. He had written a book, and he had started talking about his experience and then how he worked as a translator for other refugees that had come to the United States from Somalia, and was talking about this time where he was like helping someone navigate Walmart for the first time. And the woman he was with just like didn't understand how to like navigate the space at all, because it was so foreign to her. And, and it got me thinking about, how do you deal when you're a refugee or someone from somewhere else with a culture that's entirely foreign, when you're displaced, when you have people that are being racist toward you and being xenophobic toward you. And like that, just like suddenly it was like, this is the story. And it was like immediately, I was like, started to like think about like how to do that. And then it's like, and then once that happens, it's like, it's
the ball starts rolling.
It's so exciting. The ball's rolling. And it's not to say that like there weren't times where it's like, how do you phrase this, or when do you do this, and stuff like that. But, I think the hardest thing for me is like writing something like Best Restaurants for Pittsburgh Magazine, because it's,
that's literally what I was just going to bring up.
Like, how do you write about a place like Casbah?
Yeah.
Which is always great, but, it's been on the Best Restaurants list since I've started doing it. It's been there since longer. You know what to expect, and you know what to get. How do you make that unique every year?
Absolutely.
In 200 words.
That's a good point. So that's what it is, 200 words?
About, for each like blurb.
Okay. So, I mean, like to put that, like even for me to write descriptions for the podcast of like what we talk about, like whenever I'm sitting there and I try to like kind of go back over like the things that we come about, like I don't want to I don't want to write out like a book in a description for an Instagram post, because people are just going to scroll right past it. So it's like, I'm trash at writing, and I've been developing over the last couple of years. My wife tells me I've been getting better, but it's interesting that to have like a limit of what you could do, and like how to convey what you're thinking of, and like do them justice in that little limit. What about writing like negative? Like, do you just like, is it if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all? Or like, what about, where's the honesty come into it all?
I mean, so for reviews, part of it is making a decision if I know that a place is going to be a more critical review.
Yeah.
So then the first decision is, should I write about this place in a critical sense? Is it worth writing about? And so for me, it's like, if it's like a mom and a pop business, and my review is going to hurt their business and there's no reason to write about, then I just wouldn't write about it.
Oh, that's
because
good.
like there's no, like I have 11, the luxury of having 11 print reviews a year, as opposed to being a newspaper critic who has to do, like 40 something. Yeah. Is I have some choice over what I can do, what I want to do and what I don't want to do. But if it's a restaurant that's like a big opening, that is a place that people are talking about, that my perspective is there, then like what I try to do is be, like constructive criticism, I think, so it's, I think, the first couple of years I did it, it was like, there were probably times where I was just like, that's a good zinger and that's a good turn of the phrase. Cause you want it to be a good read, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And, there are moments where you're like, that's clever. But I think, over the years, what I've learned is that no one thinks they're doing shit work, Yeah. So I'm not going to like have a good turn of the phrase at the expense of
someone else's passion.
But if I can like write something that's constructive, but also like, good to read, then I'll definitely do that. Sure. But I think it's just setting things in context. Like,
that makes sense.
Trying not to be an asshole.
Yeah. I mean, and that's where I was curious of it, because like you have all these places, like your job is to go and, try different things and, talk about different places. And I'm sure that not every place is great. And there's some negatives about things. And I feel like, for you to keep, whenever I say you, I mean like anyone creative putting out like a creative outlet, like I try to be authentic about things. And luckily for me, I don't have to like critique people a lot. But for someone that is like you, is like any other, columnist or writer, you have to keep some sort of authenticity. So if you go to a place and it's, not good, like I've always wondered how you incorporate that into like your work, because you don't want to like you said, you don't want to shit on some place and like completely destroy their business. But you also want to keep that authentic like outlook and like that experience.
Yeah. And I mean, and you're doing, it's twofold. It's primarily a service for readers. So I want to help people navigate one, like, should you spend your money here?
Yeah.
Should you spend your time here?
Yeah.
And then if you're going to do that, like, what are things that you should get? But it's also a service for the restaurants. And so I think when you write about it in a way that's constructive, then, hopefully they're receptive to that too.
Yeah.
And, what I've learned at least is that the places that are receptive to it or can say like, hey, like, I disagree with you. I think this sandwich is perfect.
Yeah.
But, but I hear you or whatever. Like, there's a big difference between places like that and places that like would like call my publisher.
Yeah. That are basically, I get what you're saying now. People that could take some constructive criticism and like, build off of that rather than just saying, F you.
Yeah. In the same way that like I have people that I trust that like sometimes I'll write something and they'll be like, hey, I don't think you quite got this. And, I'm open to that too.
Yeah. That's, now do you have to deal with, have you ever had to deal with negative? I mean, if all your, your years of writing, like, is there any places that, we're not happy with things that you've written?
Yeah.
And yeah. I mean, like, how do you deal with that? Like, do they like contact you or call your publisher? Have you had people do that?
I've had, a bunch of different things. And I think there are people who would like sort of, call the publisher and just like, I don't know. It's like, what are you going to do about that? And as long as I feel like there was integrity in my work, if someone wants to do that, then like that's kind of on them.
Yeah.
And then there are times that people have called me and offered different perspectives. And in the same way that I'm sure it's happened with restaurants, like there are times where I'm just like, oh shit, like I didn't even think about that. And it's like, that's great. Like I don't think anyone that does anything should expect to be perfect.
Absolutely.
All the time. I think when you try to be perfect all the time or try to be cautious all the time, you're not going to be able to express yourself fully.
Yeah.
So I think you have to be thoughtful all the time, and you have to, especially when it's something that you don't know that much about, ask people that know more about it.
Absolutely.
And try to learn, but also like learn from like experiences where things don't go as well as planned.
Yeah, the food industry is interesting, especially like being from a consumer's point of view, because like, you go to a restaurant and you're expected like, you pay this money and you're like, oh, we should have like X, Y, and Z as far as like service, quality of food, and like, cost. But like, I feel like people, if they've never worked in a food industry or if they never had any experience in it, they don't really understand like the chaotic environment it is in like a kitchen or anything. And I'm a perfect example. I never really had any food. I never really worked in any food restaurants or anything like that. And I did a couple days running food at Streets and just to help them out. And I was just like, I was mind blown by like the kitchen of just like on a day that wasn't even like, it was in the middle of the week. It wasn't even a weekend. It wasn't even like a crazy dinner rush, but like to see these like tickets just piling up and to see like the 3 people, not even like a full crazy staffed kitchen, just 3 people like running around like chickens with their heads cut off. And then there's people downstairs that might be getting like offended over like waiting an extra 10 minutes for like an appetizer. And then they start going nuts and then they immediately jump on Yelp and give people 1 stars and like kind of rip away everything everyone worked for with 1 bad review. I feel like that right there, just me working in there for a day or 2, like opened up a crazy world of like, what are the possibilities of what's going on back there? Like before you flip out on your waitress and, do all this stuff, like think about like how crazy it could be back there. You got 100 people sitting in here. Everyone's getting all kinds of different shit. People are trying to catch up. Like, I don't know. Me working there, it really blew my mind just seeing like the velocity that everyone has to move and like the accuracy that people have to do. And then I dropped 2 plates down the steps right before I left. It was bad news.
Yeah. I mean, people, I don't think people always see all the physical and mental labor that goes into it.
Yeah.
I think this has changed a little bit just with the popularity of like more cooking shows and like sort of inside restaurant stuff. But I think there was this perception that like people would just show up at the restaurant at like 4:45 and open at 5.
Yeah.
And, off you go. And it's this thing, but it's like someone's been there since 8 a.m.
Yeah. Cutting vegetables.
Yeah, cutting vegetables and prepping stuff. And, there's 3 new wines on the menu. So if you're working on the floor, you have to learn how to describe all these wines and taste them and be able to facilitate that experience.
Yeah.
And and also just like the physical toll of just like you're on your feet for a long time.
Yeah, all day.
And you're working, and and in the best world, you're also there to give other people a great experience, right?
Absolutely.
So you're also giving a lot of like your own like energy to make sure that other people are happy.
Yeah, going the extra distance to make sure that you're not just like throwing food down and walking away. And it's interesting because like I was someone who like I've obviously always loved food, but like I was never someone that would like, I would always rather, let's stop at Chipotle instead of driving, 35 minutes to go to a random restaurant on the other side of town to just try it out for the first time. I just was a creature of habit. Chipotle, Texas Roadhouse, stupid shit like that, whenever we have all these great things in the city. And now that I moved over to the city, I've been here for like 5 years with my wife. We kind of just go and try different places, and like going to these different places, you kind of get different experiences of things, of like the wait staff and like how like prepared and like what they offer, and like all the different, all the different extras that all these places have, and you start to like learn like how things function differently. And it's super interesting to like just take that into consideration, like look at people's menus and like see how many people are around there and like see what they're offering and see what they do. And like, I don't know, it's pretty cool. I enjoy going to new places now and like kind of like taking in the extras rather than just like going there, ordering my food, sitting there, looking at my phone and talking to my wife. I like to look around the atmosphere. I like to look at the people behind there cooking and like seeing what's going on. It's pretty interesting. I don't know if I ever would have like taken that into consideration until like I became friends with Matt at Streets, because like, I'll go up into the kitchen and I like see what they're doing, and it like just made me like super curious and interested in like how it functions and like how that machine works so smoothly.
Well, it's become our theater in a way too. So I think it used to be that you would, in your leisure time, like go see a movie at the movie theater or go do a lot of things. And I think now we're at a point where going to a restaurant is kind of like the cultural entertainment in a lot of ways, right? So it used to be, all right, we're going to pop in, Chipotle or whatever for like a half hour, and then we're going to go do the thing we're really doing. Whereas now it's like, ooh, like let's go to, Apteca, and we're going to spend the evening there.
Yeah,
and it becomes a thing, right? Hours. So you sit there for a long time, and that becomes part of the experience.
Yeah, it was great. It's I never did that before, and like we just went to Cobra, and like I was with Matt and his wife and my wife, and like we were there for probably 2.5 hours, 2 hours, and it was just like the experience of it all was like it was so like refreshing, because like from the beginning we went there, our waiter there like was the most on point I've ever experienced. Like he broke down everything, and like it was everything I wanted, because like I never been to a Korean barbecue restaurant, and like I've never had that experience, and I've never like I don't know what any of this stuff is, and for them to like the prep and like the care that they have in their wait staff to be able to like break down that menu like that in such an efficient way to where I was like completely satisfied. I was like, I know what this is. I want this. This is going to be great. And it was just like a great experience rather than just like running in and getting it real quick and getting out. It's like being patient and being present in that moment adds to the experience of it all.
And that's at a place like that. It's intentional too. It's, they design that space with the idea that they want you to spend hours there. They want you to hang out at the bar for a while.
Yeah.
And then sit at the tables and like share this social experience of like grilling meats together.
Yeah, it was really cool.
And then like maybe, like move over to like the karaoke room.
It's wild.
And it's good. And, the design is like really appealing for that. The music is really appealing for that. And so like they really, I know about this because I'm writing about them this week.
Yeah.
And I went there and I thought it was great. It's on my mind because it was what I was doing right before I came here.
Oh, that fits.
But it's really accumulation of all these things where it's like, we want you to come here and spend, like a long time and kind of get lost in this place for a while.
Yeah, and enjoy it.
Yeah.
It was, whenever I first walked in there, it reminded me of like a club from like Demolition Man. Mm-hmm. And you ever see that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's sort of like their kind of design aesthetic is like what people in the 1980s thought the future would look like.
Yeah. That's exactly what I felt like. I guess that's the point. But I thought it was really great. I thought it was super interesting. Now, for you to, I mean, it looks like you just go around and eat everything pretty much. Like, how do you just like hear of places and put them on a list?
Yeah. I mean, I think because like I have the luxury of this being my full-time job.
Yeah.
You know, I get to like just like go out and explore. And so there are times where I just like, there are times where I might just like drive around or just like kind of like just like start Googling, you know, places and like different cities like around Pittsburgh and like around. So there's that. I love Instagram.
Yeah. It's
and
fantastic.
So it's easy, you know, for me, it's like I'm like looking at stuff on there. And then, you know, I've got either like friends or just like strangers sometimes that are like, hey, there's this place.
Yeah.
You should check it out.
Absolutely.
And, you know, oftentimes it's not always great, but sometimes like things really work out. So I'm writing, I have a story coming out in the March issue on a place called Back to the Foodshire.
Back to the Foodshire.
Yeah. Which is, they're also really into social media. And I ended up like connecting them somehow on Instagram. And it's this place where it's a engaged couple and the guy runs the front of the house and he's like really into like the analog age and memories of sort of like the pre kind of like everything is connected time. So he built this like little museum of like artifacts. So like old cell phones and like old cameras and all these things.
Yeah.
And then also with his fiance Angel it's a former bar space. So they filled that entire bar with a historical timeline from the 1900s to the present of like all these pop culture moments. Jeez. And like historical things like, and then, but like peppered in with like photos of their families. So it's like tied in this personal thing. And then Angel runs the kitchen. And I was like, at first I was like, I don't know, man, like there's like 100 kinds of wings and 30 kinds of burgers.
Where's
and like,
this
some
at?
of them have like donuts in Pitcairn.
Pitcairn?
Yeah. And like some of these burgers are like built in grilled cheeses and I don't know.
And you went there?
So I got a couple friends and we went there and we ordered some things and I was like, let's order some ridiculous things. And like, they were just like delicious.
Really?
Like, it was like wild. And then I went again and was like, all right, like let's, you know, get some like classic sort of wing flavors that were like incredible, like maybe best in Pittsburgh.
Really?
But then also I was like, all right, let's get those sweet basil wings. Let's see how those are. And it's like, those are delicious too. And it turns out that like she is like influenced by, you know, her, like she grew up with these like Southern grandmas that like come from a lineage of other Southern grandmas that like, you know, generations of cooking, but also is like infatuated with like Guy Fieri and has like managed to like synergize these two things into something. And it's like, that's like my favorite part of my job is, you know, something like that where I'm just
that
like,
sounds really cool.
Shit, like,
Pitcairn, Back to the
Yeah.
Future. I have to write that down.
Yeah.
Wow. And it's just like American food, basically.
It's
wings,
like wings and
shit?
burgers and fries and hot dogs.
Wow, and it's all great, huh?
Yeah,
man, I can't wait to try that. I'm a big wing guy. Now, for you to go around and eat all these different things, like, do you ever experience food that you dislike? Like, or are you is your palate like more refined that you're trying all this stuff?
I mean, I can distinguish between this is not like a good version of this, or this isn't good, or I don't like this, as opposed to something like this isn't for me, but it's a well done version of what it is.
Okay, yeah.
And I think that's sort of like one of the keys to my job is being able to recognize, like, even if it's not for me, is it still, you know, done as it should be?
Yeah.
But also like, I sometimes like I did this story on hamburgers a couple years ago and like ate a lot of mediocre hamburgers and no one pitied me. That was like the weirdest part of my job was like, so sometimes like, and this happened with the Devonshire too. Cause I had a lot of really bad Devonshires. I was really happy for the Streets on Carson one. Cause it's like, finally, this is a good one. That's like,
you're just eating all these random,
eating the stuff and people are like, how are you? And I'm like, I'm terrible. And they're like, oh no, why? And I'm like, I'm doing a story on hamburgers and I'm eating a lot of hamburgers. And they're just like,
it's like, wow,
you,
cry me
like,
a river, dude.
Yeah. Oh, but I really did. And then I remember during that, I just finished that story and I went to a conference with other food writers, and I was telling someone this story, and she had just done this thing on fried chicken, and she's like, dude, she's like, yeah, and she's like, no one gives you any like pity, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, no, and she's like, I know it's hard because
Now you're in this. How long?
Also, don't pity me because I was eating hamburgers.
Oh, I'm not
for work.
pitying you at all. That's I don't think anyone can. Now, for you to be like, how long have you been working with the magazine?
I think I've been on staff for a little over 4 years now.
Now, if you, whenever you started there, like, what is the beginning of you starting? Like, did you kind of have some free reign since you already had like a little bit of experience in it all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I have been really lucky to have 2 editors now that trusted me in what I was doing, and gave me pretty good freedom. You know, so like sometimes we're working on a package, so we're doing. In April, we're doing a story on some boutique hotels in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And so part of my assignment is to write about the restaurants at those hotels.
Yeah.
And that was like something that I probably wouldn't have like written about in the April issue normally, but like is in my wheelhouse and like happy to do it.
That's cool though. Sometimes there's constraints.
But then like things like Back to the Food Sure or Turkey Devonshire that like when I start describing them are absurd, you know, to like have, you know, to have my editor trust me enough when I'm like, hey, there's this Turkey Devonshire. And so like, we're still going to do sandwiches, but like, I think I'm going to do a sidebar on this thing. And he's like, cool. Yeah. Do a sidebar on it. That sounds interesting. And then like 2 weeks later, I'm like, what if we do sort of like half and half? Like I'll do like an Allegheny River sandwich crawl. But then also like a little bit like more of like a featurette on Turkey Devonshire. And he's like, okay, cool. Do it. And then like a week later, I'm like, what if we just like scrap sandwiches and I write a cover story on the Turkey Devonshire? And he's like, okay, cool, dude. You know, it's like, and to like have someone that trusts that it's going to turn out well.
Yeah,
I think
that's
really
so
important.
cool. That would be like, that would be so much like, that would just, I don't know. I feel like that would boost me up. You know, like if someone was just like behind you like that and was like into your ideas. Now, do they ever like turn away any ideas that you have?
Once in a blue moon, but I think I've got a pretty good track record. You know, I wouldn't pitch something unless I've thought it out pretty well.
Yeah.
And I think that's my end of the job is to like not just like willy nilly, just like throw stuff out there.
Yeah. Have you ever pitched anything where they were like, that's a little bit too much?
Nothing that I can recall right now. I'm sure there have been stories that.
Well, if you
like,
can't recall it
like,
offhand, then it's obviously
like that's not that interesting, and which means that was probably right. You know,
Yeah.
if like I can't remember it now.
Yeah,
Like, there's
absolutely.
nothing I'm like holding on to that I'm like one day. You know,
One day I'm
one
gonna
day they'll let me write that story.
about jelly hamburgers.
Yeah.
So now, whenever you're going around all these different places, like, do you kind of just centralize around like the city of Pittsburgh, or like, are you like expanding like further and further, like other states at all?
I mean, it's Pittsburgh or around Pittsburgh
Yeah.
for the magazine because that's what we do.
Yeah.
I wrote a story a few years ago on chefs that grew up in Pittsburgh that were doing cool things in other cities.
That's pretty cool.
Which was fun, and it was like kind of started on a selfish thing because the chef Michael Solomonov, who grew up in Pittsburgh, that like is in Philadelphia and runs my favorite restaurant, Zahav, and a bunch of other restaurants with his business partner Steve Cook, and Steve's wife is also from Pittsburgh, and Mike and Steve's wife like Shira knew each other when they were kids, and there was like some family overlaps.
So a lot of Pittsburgh.
So like
ties.
it sort of started with like being interested in that, but also really just like wanting to write a story that would like let me go to Zahav for work. But then it actually turned into like a really good story where I sort of structured it that like Mike was like having this moment, and then there's a chef named Frank Ruda who's in DC who's kind of this legend who grew up in Pittsburgh but was like a White House chef in the 70s and was like
Really?
doing stuff. And then another chef, Sean Eland, who now is in San Francisco as a pastry chef at this restaurant Nari and is like doing brilliant stuff, but was just sort of starting in San Francisco at the time.
That's pretty cool.
So like that structure worked. So that was 4 years ago. So that was like a story that like, but it was relevant to Pittsburgh Magazine.
Yeah,
'cause
like it
was
had like
Pittsburgh-based.
the base of it all.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool though that it still could like get to that like, you know, that sort of like range. Now if you're writing all these things and like you're starting to like you brought it up before, like the best of how do you keep it from being biased? You know, like if let's say you love a Turkey Devonshire, that's your favorite thing in the world. And you go to, you know, 5 different restaurants and like one of them has a good Devonshire, but like the other ones, like how do you choose? Like how do you stick to like being and not biased as far as like, you know, giving the best of?
I mean, I think it's like always kind of checking yourself and making sure you're not being biased.
Yeah.
Because like I've been doing this long enough and I was writing about food in a different way before. any sort of critical voice came into it.
Yeah.
That I do have like personal relationships with like some people that work in the industry. And so I think part of it is like just being above board and being ethical and, you know, being transparent, which is really important.
Yeah, that's good that you're like that.
And I think part of it is asking other people that I trust, you know, so like Best Restaurants is, you know, it's the biggest project of the year.
Yeah.
It's, you know, the day it ends is the day it starts, the next one.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it is taking notes throughout the year and being able to structure stuff and like not just like trying to do it last minute. So like, you know, things are in place, but then also I send other people out to eat, you know, for something like that.
Okay.
Because I know my experience is going to be different because Pittsburgh's a small town, right?
Absolutely.
So
You got them undercover moles.
there are certain places that it's just like, great, like this, you know, I mean, Legumes closing, but like easy, you know, on the list.
Yeah.
Bar Marco, easy, on the list. And then there are other places that I'm like, I'm not sure about this. Like, I think I like it. I think I don't like it. It's sort of on the border for me. And then I have like a bunch of other people that I'm like, what do you think? You know, or can you guys make it a point to go to so-and-so restaurant and give me your feedback?
Yeah. That makes sense.
And then that becomes part of the conversation.
Now, since this is a long project, do you like revisit places throughout the year and like, you know, go there like, let's say, oh, I'm going to hit this place like 3 times and like give like a collective of your experience there?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I try to get to, I think this year for sure, I'll have been to every restaurant that's going to be on the best restaurants list. Most years I do. In the past, until last year, there was an entire committee that I kind of inherited.
Yeah.
So there were like 20 people that were like sort of part of the assemblage of the
Okay.
list.
That makes sense.
And then because I was the first like person that's like been on staff full time, that like this is my job, the structure of that changed a little bit over the last year or so. But there's still people that are going out and eating, and so there's like always feedback coming in.
That's cool though. Now, whenever you do this, do you try to hit like different menus, like how do you incorporate like a vegan option, or like do you incorporate that?
Yeah.
Do you incorporate like, you know, I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna have like a meat based dish. I'm gonna have a pasta dish if they have it. Like, do you try like the different like realms of food in those places?
Most things. I mean, I think, you know, I think the first thing is figuring out like, what is this restaurant, right?
Yeah.
So if it's a place like, I don't care about vegan dishes at a place like Gaucho as much because that's not what they're putting out.
That's a good point.
You know?
Yeah, touche.
Which is not to say that like every restaurant should have good vegetarian options at this point, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Even a place
especially.
like Gaucho, which does, I have to say, Gaucho actually does have some really good vegetarian options.
That's the only place I haven't been yet that it's been like, you know, everyone in the world has been telling me to go.
Yeah.
But I just can't stand there for 45 minutes
I know,
on a
it's,
cold night.
Yeah.
I got to take off work one day. Whenever you were younger, were you like into watching food shows at all?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I remember when the Food Network first came out, and you know, I've been for a very long time obsessed with the Japanese version of Iron Chef.
Oh yeah.
Which was, you know, a product of the 90s, which combines like the best of like culinary competition with like very high camp theatrics.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Flames and shit like that.
Yeah, flames, and like I'm convinced that I don't know if you watch Schitt's Creek.
I did a little bit.
Great
Yeah.
show, but I'm convinced that like the character Moira, who's like a character on there who has
Yeah.
I'm like convinced that like they pulled her wardrobe from Chairman Kaga.
That's a great show.
Yeah.
I came into it late. My wife was watching it, and I love you, Eugene Levy, and she was like, "That's his son," and I was like, "Holy shit, they do look alike."
Yeah.
But it's interesting to like know about like so like from your point of view. I mean, like, what is your? I don't know if this is a good question or not, but like, what do you think of like all the saturation of all the cooking shows now? Like, do you think that it's like too much? Do you think that there's like, you know, do you think it's awesome? Like, what are your thoughts on it?
Like a little of both, I think. You know, it's like I feel like anything that gets popular gets derivative at a certain point, but also anything that gets popular allows for people that are like good at what they do and creative to make even better stuff.
Yeah.
So
That's
I
a good
think,
point.
you know, you look at the lineage of like certain things. You look at the lineage of Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah.
And I think some of the stuff that like, you know, David Chang has done that comes out of that.
Yeah.
Or salmon nostrate, like salt, fat, acid, heat, like those things come out of that, and like they speak with their own voices and their own integrity. And I think, you know, what's exciting now is that we're starting to see, more and more diverse voices too. So it's not just, I say this as the white male narrator, but it's not just the white male narrator that's like telling these stories, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's really important because I think what then happens is you get a lot of different perspectives, and I think we all get to learn that way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. That's a good point. And it is like I do notice that like I tend to gravitate towards watching cooking shows. Like I watch them a lot, but like you could tell which ones are like kind of trash, and you could tell which ones are like wow, like the Street Food Diaries or something. Mm-hmm. Did you watch that?
Yeah.
Like I thought that was so great because it's like it seems like they're highlighting like the people that are like really in the shit, like the people that are like that have been doing that, like the old grandmothers that are in there like whipping these walks, and it's not just like it's not like the diners, drive-ins, and dives, which I like too. It's just like I like learning more about the hidden gems, and I think that it's awesome that like we're having all these cooking shows and everything because that kind of like I feel like that is a good tool to like spark people's interests. You know what I mean? It's like they see these types of food and you're like, oh, I would like to try something like that, but because like if you're not someone who is into food on that level, you're not going to learn what some shit is. You're not going to like, have a hankering to try bone marrow and stuff like that. And I feel like a lot of that has to come with like cooking shows and like Anthony Bourdain and stuff. I kind of been saying like, fuck it. I just want to try, anything really, like regardless of what it is, even if it's gross or not. But if I don't like it, I don't like it, but I do want to try it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's coming into stuff with an attitude of like, I want to like this, and I'm going to like this. And I think, for me, it's like as someone who used to be a picky eater, I remember when I would try stuff and it's like you decide beforehand that you don't like it, right? So like, of course you're not going to like it then, or you're not going to be open to it.
Absolutely.
Whereas if you're just like, and I think some of it's like different flavors and some of it's just like cultural preferences. So I think, we were talking about this last night in Chinese culture that like sort of like gelatinous and crunchy and that sort of like space like jellyfish that's like both gelatinous and crunchy at the same time, but kind of like not neither is like it's an unfamiliar taste to people in the West, but it's a very familiar taste to people in China.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so I think it's some of it is just like takes getting used to, or like takes like learning a new thing, or open-minded,
Huh.
And also being okay with being like, that's not for me.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So like what are your goals coming up? Like, do you want to, I mean, obviously you have an awesome job. I assume that you don't want to do anything. You don't want to stray away from that. I wouldn't want to, but like, what are your hopes and dreams for what you want to do?
Yeah. I mean, it's cool to be in a place where like my goals right now are just to get better at what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I think that's great. Like, I think we're in this cultural moment where people still think like, oh, I have to like aspire to like, like move on to this or do that. But there's also something to be said for just being like, man, I just want to like get better at my job here. And
I'm happy with what it is. Like there's nothing wrong with being happy. It's just like more times than not, people are stuck in a job that they are not happy with. So they feel that obligation to go and search for more and do better and like climb the corporate ladder. But like, if you're happy with what you do, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
That's cool. I like that. I think you're a very interesting person.
Cool. Thanks, man.
I think that, you got a cool job. You get to go around and try awesome stuff and, give your opinions about it and get paid for it.
Yeah.
What else could you
also tell other people's stories, which is,
yeah,
as fun as it is for me to be like, I know this and I know that, like the idea of just being able to be like, like you're a small business in Pitcairn and you're just like struggling to get by, and then suddenly it's like I have a platform that I can share.
Yeah, it's
and
awesome.
Be like, check out these sweet basil wings.
Check
and
out
the
these
hamburger inside the pretzel bun.
From Back to the Food Truck. Yeah. I can't wait to try that out now. All right, so I'm going to get to the ending segment of the podcast. The ending segment of the podcast is a segment called Desert Island Questions. Desert Island Questions is where I give each of my guests 3 categories to take with them on a desert island to exhaust until they die, I guess. But the first category of things to take with you on a desert island is 3 things to watch. So you could pick TV shows, movies, whatever. 3 choices.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Get ready because you're getting thrown in.
Yeah, this is it. So just the same TV shows or movies.
You get 3 choices.
over and over again.
Over and over again. It's
Wow.
I literally drop you on an island like Tom Hanks in Castaway,
Yeah.
and I give you a little shoebox full with 3. You could pick a VHS if you wanted, or DVD, Blu-ray, whatever you want, but 3 choices.
Wait, like 3, like say like The Godfather and that's it, or like DVDs.
I'll give you
or-
I'll give you all of the Godfathers if you want them, but
I don't know if that's what I want really, but
yeah, get specific.
Yeah,
3 movies.
I would probably take Anthony Bourdain's series.
Okay, I'm that's good.
'cause,
I'll give
I
you that
could
whole
travel
one.
through his eyes and see that. I have no favorite movies really, which is weird.
No favorite movies?
I don't know if there's like a movie. I mean, I'm like thinking about Pete's Dragon from my childhood, but I think that would actually drive me bananas if that was like one of the things that I would have on an island. Not the remake, the original one. But maybe the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, actually. Let's throw that in there.
I was just, me and my
Yeah.
wife just watched it after we came home from Cobra, and we watched it. It was the first time I watched it in probably 15 years.
Yeah.
Same thing with Yoo-Hoo, and I was blown away by how great it was. Like, it really holds up. It's a fantastic movie.
Yeah,
And it's super creepy.
Yeah, it's everything you want. All right, we'll take that.
Okay.
And then I will take, this is a harder question than I thought it was going to be.
Oh, it's hard.
I'm going to go with like, I've just been like into these now. Bon Appetit has a YouTube channel
Yeah.
that cooks. There's just like good cooking stuff.
Someone
on
just
there.
told me about the Brad Leone or
Yeah.
something. It's called like It's Alive or something.
I think that's what it is. Yeah.
I gotta watch it because everyone's been telling me about that too. All right, so you got Willy Wonka, you got Anthony Bourdain, and you got the Bon Appetit YouTube.
yeah.
That's
good.
good.
The third one probably wouldn't actually be.
That's all right.
One second, but I'm going to take it for now.
All right. Do you read it all?
Yeah.
Okay. Second category is 3 books.
Ooh. I'm going to go with. God, there's so many good books.
There's a lot.
I also I don't revisit stuff a lot. I was just talking about this last night, so I'm going to go with some of MFK Fisher's writing.
Okay.
She's a food writer from, I want to say like the 30s or 40s. But her work is beautiful because it's literary.
Okay.
I mean, I guess like it's been a long time since I read this, but I think Jack Kerouac's On the Road still would, or Dharma Bums would still hold up in a way
Okay.
that would like kind of make me think about stuff.
Yeah.
And then maybe like the cookbooks of Edna Lewis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are good choices. I don't know what half of them are, but those are good.
Yeah.
Okay, so the third category is 3 things to listen to on a desert island. So you get to pick 3 CDs.
Ooh, okay. I'd go with the Pixies Trompe Le Monde. I'd probably, I was gonna say there was a band called Skank and Pickle, which was a ska band from Petaluma
Skank and
back in
Pickle.
the day. But I don't think I'd actually want to listen to that on a desert island for a long time.
Just over
It
and
doesn't
over.
remind me of home in my youth, though. Probably, I'd go with the Clash,
Okay.
and I would want some classical music.
Classical.
Yeah, because I think you'd want to like have a little like
Yeah.
kind of relax.
Yeah, I could get down with that.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go generic.
That's
Classical,
fine. Generic classical.
music.
I like that. I'll give you a generic classical playlist. All right. So the third to last question is if you had to pick. Now I know this is going to be hard for you, but 3 of your favorite restaurants in the city, personally, like that you could go to and eat whenever.
Oh yeah, Chengdu Gourmet.
Where's that?
It's in Squirrel Hill. It's
Okay.
a Sichuan Chinese restaurant.
Say it again.
Chengdu Gourmet.
Chengdu Gourmet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I was like, that one's easy. There's so many places to go though. It's really hard. Bitter Ends Garden. Bitter Ends Luncheonette for breakfast or lunch.
Where's that?
Bloomfield.
Wow. Okay.
And I mean, it's closing, but Legume. No, well, yes, but also I'm going to go with 4 because
Okay,
it's my
that's fine.
job, so I get an extra one. And Dish Osteria.
Dish Austria.
Yeah.
Okay, I've heard about them too. Have you ever put out a list of places that you that you favor to eat? Like just
it's best restaurants in Pittsburgh.
Okay, touche. Okay, all right, so that's good. Now the second to last question is a death row meal. So you get to pick whatever you want from wherever you want, as much as you want.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
Man, I probably would go to circle back to talking about earlier, the dinner at Zahav.
Okay.
Where you basically leave it in their hands, and it starts off with like a bunch of like salatim, hummus, beets tahina, laffa bread, and then it goes into like these like grilled items and skewers, and then like it goes into like some like bigger dishes, and then it ends with this like lamb shoulder that goes through a 3-day process, and it's served with like crispy Persian style rice that's like and it's beautiful, and it's the greatest meal in the world. So
All right, that's good.
Yeah.
That sounds phenomenal. I love lamb. All right, so now the second to last thing that we do on this podcast is I have a sponsor. I'm sponsored by Turner's Premium Tea. So I do this segment. It's called the Turner's Crate. But I got every guest that I've had on here in the past to submit their own question to this bowl, and the guest picks a question and reads it and answers it as truthfully as they can
Great.
on this podcast. So let me mix up the Turner's Crate. Slide that over. Go ahead, pick one out of there.
all right, here we go. So the question is, if you had to live the rest of your life as an artist, what platform or medium would you choose? And this is from Cody Baker. I was also having a conversation last night about how bad I am at like visual art, like drawing things. I'm terrible at it.
I have so many ideas, and
Yeah.
for me to convey them to people, it's hard for me to find people to like make T-shirts and shit like that because I have no artistic ability.
Yeah. But I'm assuming that I would get to be good at whatever I was doing. But I mean, I think, I don't know. I have a lot of respect for musicians.
Yeah,
I just think they do a thing. Again, it's like a thing I can't do.
100%. That's
So
what
I'm
would
going to go
pick.
with musician.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What instrument?
Piano.
Piano?
Yeah.
Oh, I love a piano.
Yeah.
I do love a piano. Piano or a violin?
Yeah. Violin's beautiful too.
I think a violin would be insane. Jack White came here with his solo band, and he did half of a concert with all guys, and then he did the other half of the concert with his backing band of all females. And he has there's a female in his band that just rips on this violin, and it just like blew my mind. We were sitting front row, and I was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Really beautiful. Okay, so the last question that I ask everyone on the podcast is: if you could have a conversation with anyone alive or dead, who would it be and why?
Oh, I mean, I feel like we're like, I was going to say beating a dead horse, but that's kind of a shitty thing to say with Anthony because he is dead. But I mean, Anthony Bourdain. I mean, I think the way he lived his life as a journalist and as an explorer, and as someone who acknowledged sensitivity and wanted to like get better always at what he was doing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's someone that I really look up to and admire.
That makes sense. I came into him really, really late. I started watching Parts Unknown very, very late, and I was just like, damn, like now I know what everyone was all about.
Yeah, I mean, he was such a good storyteller, and I think he was such a good storyteller. I think he's someone that like he also came into what he did later in life, which is very similar to my story.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really inspiring for me.
Oh, absolutely.
Someone that had done it for a while, but like really came into like and blossomed, in his 40s basically.
And show like the care that he
And
has and like the detail that he has to all these different things.
Yeah.
It's really, really great. All right. Well, I appreciate it very much for talking to me. Take a second and promote anything you got, where people could find you, Instagram, all that shit.
Oh yeah. Instagram at Hal B Klein, HalBKlein. It's like my favorite social platform medium.
Yeah.
Go to pittsburghmagazine.com, get Pittsburgh Magazine in print. It's beautiful. I write at least almost every week a story, and then every month, for the issue, I've got 2 or 3 stories. So check it out.
That's great. Everyone else that's listening, I appreciate you very much. I'll call you right back across the board. New episodes every week. Thanks to Turner's Premium Tea for keeping the lights on. Do me a favor, take a second and subscribe and rate the podcast. That's all I ask you to do. And pop on over and follow Turner's at Turner's PGH and follow I'll Call You Right Back on Instagram. Thanks again. Call you right back.